No, I'm very happy that we both here have Roberto Ronzani from the Global Lean Network, and of course also John Shook. I think many of us know his book, at least, let's say the lean-minded or the people with lean experience, they probably have the book, right? Learning to See. Yeah. And sorry.
Because I forget the book at home, so I just did a copy of the cover and did this to show you the book. This is the most important, probably not the most important. There are other books very important for John, but this is one of those.
Exactly, and also to add a personal note to this one, I read the book when I moved to Italy, and I actually read it in Italian, and I had to almost translate every word of the book, so I wouldn't say that I remember it from, let's say, my mind, but I for sure read it very deeply, and one of the things that I appreciated, and we talked also about it during the webinar, was see together, to analyze together, to be able to take action together. So I think that's also a nice argument to close off, almost close off the day today. So I give the word to you. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you. Probably two words about myself. My name is Roberto Ronzani. I'm the administrator of Istituto Lean Management, that is the Italian member of Lean Global Network. I'm personally working on Lean since 2004, previously as a manager of an automotive company. Actually, not automotive company, but a company that produces components for automotive market. And with me, John, that was already introduced by Bastian. John is a very, I don't know how to say, but he was the first manager, a USA manager hired by Toyota in Japan many years ago. And he was working for Toyota for 11 years. Then he moved to TSSC, Toyota Support Supplier Center, to help American companies to become lean. And after that, he became for many years the chairman of Lean Global Network. Okay, John, what are you talking about today? Here people are waiting for you instead to go outside here in Florence to see this beautiful city. So you should be very, very good. But I have no doubts.
Well, I wish to be there with you. And if there are any problems, there is some technical difficulties this morning. I'm speaking to you from California in the USA. In Palo Alto at Stanford. I'm at Stanford this week. And also we'll be visiting this week an interesting place, which is the Fremont, California Auto Factory, which is where NUMMI was, the Toyota General Motors joint venture, which was an introduction of much of the world to lean production, to lean to system development. That is why Toyota hired me in 1983. And that factory is now the home of Tesla. So it's a fascinating place. A history is being written about it now, and I'm helping a little bit. But the first 20 years, it was a General Motors factory. Then it was a Toyota joint venture, NUMMI, and now Tesla. So the introduction of lean to the world, in a lot of ways, began there. And so what to talk about today, Roberto? I think we talk about the evolution of lean and agile in an age of complexity. Focus on flow.
We missed you. We have some problem today.
Question for you, Roberto.
Oh, sorry, John. We missed you for a couple of 1 minute. Can you repeat?
Are Italian companies using? Oh, okay. Again, apologies for the internet connection here. It was fine until 1 hour ago when it was not fine. So today we want to connect some of the themes of this conference. So I'm not sure that 100 years ago, things were, I think, more complex than we think, but I guess they're more complex now. So, question for you, Roberto. We, with my co-author Mike Rother and publisher Jim Womack, created the book Learning to See that Bastian referred to, and you did. So is value stream mapping, the tool we introduced, is that known in Italy? Is that used by Italian companies? How prevalent is it as a tool for creating flow?
Okay, Bastian is raising his hand.
I thought you wanted to raise hands to see how many people.
Yeah. The question is, how many of you are using value stream mapping in your activity, either in manufacturing or in administrative processes? Roughly 20%, 25%, okay. I normally visit many companies because my job is doing training, some part of coaching with several companies. And not so often I can see companies that are using value stream mapping as a tool or method, or let's understand what John will explain us about VSM. And but for those companies that are using the first time is really a very impressive tool, because it's the first time that all the people participating to the workshop in value stream mapping are able to understand how the process is going, what are the main failures, the wastes, and so and so. But I don't want to speak instead of John. John is much better than me, and for sure he wrote the book. So I pass you the baton, John.
Okay. Again, I hope that you can hear me and see me well. So let me know if you cannot. I'm going to hold up something that I hope you can see. Oh, maybe you cannot see it so well. So there's the book Learning to See, and I placed it alongside the book of system, or I tried to. That didn't work so well, I'm sorry to say. I'm going to try another way, actually. Does that work any better? I guess not. I guess not. Okay. I'd like to connect some ideas here a little bit. Nigel Thurlow is there, I know. I saw him earlier, and I'd seen him on the agenda. And I know that David Snowden has spoken as well about complexity. And the theme of the overall conference is lean and agile. I think we can connect these ideas clearly, Bastian, if you have not already done so. So Nigel's work now is on the flow system. And the book Learning to See, which we, again, is now 25 years, almost 25 years ago, we released it. And its intention is to be both a tool to design better flow, understanding that in business, or in most endeavors, we would like to have value flow from beginning, whatever beginning, until end, till it's consumed by a consumer. That's a system objective. And it sounds good, but how can we do that when we're working with, in a complex, at least a complicated system? If in David Snowden, and I systems that are needed for us in today's world. So,
John.
Looks like I'm frozen there.
John, you froze?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, John, now we can hear you,
So
but we missed you for...
You can hear me.
After...
It's of a very simple.
Vediamo se riesce a riconnettersi. Si scusa molto, ma nell'hotel fino a un'ora fa andava, però probabilmente è mattino, tutti si collegano e... Second test. John, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? No.
Yes,
Okay,
we can hear.
Off. Did that help? Can you hear me now, Roberto?
Yes, if you switch off the video, probably the connection is... we stopped to hear you when you mentioned David Snowden, so if you can start again from that point, thank you, John. It doesn't work.
So let me know if you not me. Okay. And the videos, why not? Why not? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now, yes.
Okay. I turned off the Wi-Fi. I think you'll be able to hear me now without video. Apologies, everyone. My internet was working fine until just 1 hour ago.
It's much better
so can you hear me, Roberto?
It's much better than before, so you can go forward with the telephone.
Okay, very well. So I think we have an opportunity to connect some ideas here. Nigel Thurlow, who has already presented to you, presented his flow system. David Snowden with his amazing work on understanding complexity. I have used over my career of now almost 40 years of doing lean. As Roberto mentioned, I was hired by Toyota in 1983 to help them transfer their system, we use the word system here, overseas from Japan. The company had never done this before, so one of the nice things about Toyota is that it is not afraid to admit when it doesn't know. And with the challenge ahead that the company faced of introducing the flow system, Nigel, I'm going to say they had worked on a flow system, a production system to flow value. They had been working on this system for 50 years and were ready to introduce it to the world. How to do this presented many, many challenges. So luckily, I was hired by them to help introduce this system. At the beginning of thinking about the system, I unfortunately cannot show you. I'm holding in my hands a TPS manual that I wrote in 1985 that begins by describing the complexity of the auto industry. This is the context that is given to think about how to create a production and management system. That the auto industry is extraordinarily long in terms of both time and space. It's large in terms of both time and space, and complex, or at least complicated, David Snowden. It's at least complicated, if not complex. And I would say highly complicated. In my words, I've thought of it as, in fact, a complex system. But I'm also not tied to that language. So as we began this process of introducing lean thinking, lean production, lean practice to the world, we recognized that companies did not know how to flow very well. And that is, in fact, what Toyota had innovated in its system in Japan. And as a way to introduce a simple system design tool. So I want to discuss value stream mapping as a simple system design tool. We created the book, Learning to See. As Bastian said, I love the title, Learning to See. It is a process whereby we as a team, as everyone involved, as a small system, can learn to see how the system works at a simple level. It's not the entire system. It's not three-dimensional. A value stream map presents a two-dimensional look at a medium-sized system within a larger system. So from the earlier question, I understand maybe 20% of you are familiar with this tool. But it is fascinating to see how this has, I think, benefited many companies. It is also a tool that is misused, as all tools will be. It has a high-level purpose, but it is deceptively simple. So all the lean tools are simple on the surface, but underneath there's much more substance that makes them effective in a real-world context. And a value stream map is a good example of that. So what you see here, to describe it briefly, imagine a horizontal line drawn across the middle of that map. On the bottom half, you see what we usually see when we go and look at any operation, any manufacturing production operation. You have something being processed in process A, then there are, and it works as fast as it can without regard to the rest of the system. And it pushes things to the next operation which may or may not be ready for it. And then that operation also works independently, trying to be efficient. People misunderstand lean as a matter of efficiency. It absolutely is not. Lean is about understanding how the system works to make it a little better today than it was yesterday, and then try to make it better tomorrow, with an idea to, first of all, how the overall system works, but also without thinking about grand system design. It's simply a matter of how to understand and how to make choices of what to do next. The practical problem in large organizations, and by large, I mean any organization more than 5 people, the challenge is for everyone to know, how does each person, how does each operation know what to do next? How does each operation decide what to do next? So that gets us to the top half of the map, where you see the lines descending from, it says production control, where information goes to each operation, telling each operation what to do when. Now, this is a traditional look at the way a traditional production systems work, which every operation, every process along the bottom, operating as an independent island, trying to be efficient unto itself. And then at the top, some controller trying to tell each individual, each operation, what to do when. And as we know in the real world, that doesn't work. The way things actually flow, the way things work in the real world is much too complex to try to control it in this way. So we try to think then about separating the flow of work, or the flow of material along the bottom, and the flow of information we see coming from the top. In this case, you have instructions descending from heaven, telling each person what to do when. And the result is a mess. And we come up with a simple system output metric. You see in that the red line at the bottom. In this case, it's an example that's used in our book, Learning to See. And it shows that for this system to produce something, to produce value for a customer, to deliver value for a customer, it takes about a month, about 24 working days, which is about a month. The other side of the red line shows how much of that time is actually value-creating work. And that is about 3 minutes. And traditionally, this is very typical. So when I used to visit many, many factories, as Roberto does still today, this is usually the state of nature, which is very extraordinarily messy. Now, reality is messy. We can't exactly do away with that, but we can work our way into being effective within messy reality better than we typically do. So we start by redesigning this, and the work to do this does not go straight to doing process level Kaizen, which is the way so many process improvement methodologies begin. Oh, let's go to the middle process there, where there is some welding. And let's try to take some time out of the amount of time it takes to weld. Well, that's very difficult to do, number one. Number two, it is not going to help the overall system performance. It's not going to make the overall system more productive. So rather than go and start working on the efficiency of each operation, let's think of how this works as a system, and Nigel, as a flow system. As a flow of just two dimensions, which is not every dimension of a business. An overall enterprise system is even more complex, but this is at a level where we can actually create a system design. And we're going to do that by asking questions of what is the system output requirement, or at least our desire, what would we like the system to, how would we like the system to be able to produce? For example, if I'm making cars, automobiles, most automobile assembly plants in the world try to produce about one product every minute. That way, I can produce about 500 cars a day or a shift, which I can then make available to my customers. So if that's the design I would like to have, something that can produce at that rate, I can turn that into a flow rate, which we use the German term takt time. This is the rate at which we would like everything to flow in unison, everything rowing together, if you think of the rowboat metaphor. So in the face of a reality where things are always changing, where things always go wrong, so that the grand plan you see there descending from heaven to each operation, even if it works perfectly, it's still going to take 1 month. And the thing is, it does not work perfectly ever. The machine will always break down. There will be parts that always don't arrive. And for a car, again, I still think of the automobile industry as a pretty complex system, David Snowden. It may not fit in your definition of complexity, which I understand and are trying to understand better. But it's at least very, very complicated. So how can we then wrestle that down to a level of reality where we can make things better and more predictable for the customer and for each individual operation, so everyone knows what to do next? And the secret, as it turns out, is the second dimension that we're mapping here, which is the flow of production instructions, production information. How can we simplify that? So we'll begin by thinking, instead of instructions descending from heaven to each operation, how can we send the instruction to one place only? Schedule only one place. And from that one place, everything flows smoothly downstream according to the takt time or the customer demand rate, and upstream everything pulls, so that everything then is connected by simplified customer-supplier relationships. I do think systems are defined by understanding relationships, and this way we're making this explicit in this simple map, which it might take us a day, half a day, or less than 2 days to draw a current state map, which presents an ugly picture of the way things are today. And from that, we can ask the questions of what is our demand rate? Then we can ask and turn that into a takt time, which is a interpretation translating the demand rate into something that each operation can understand. Then we'll ask the question, where can we flow? And in today's world, with increasing complexity, flowing is more difficult perhaps in the past, but it has been difficult in complex organizations or complicated organizations for a very long time. And that is exactly what this tool, that method, intends to help us understand better and therefore improve. So we're going to flow where we can, down to the customer, and where we cannot flow, that gives us a problem, a challenge, and there we will pull. We will come up with some way to connect that flow so that it gives a production instruction for upstream as it flows everything downstream. So it's fairly, I think of this the way I've always thought of systems is they're typically, in my study, David Snowden, which is not as complete as yours, there are basically two ways that I found systems to be described or defined. One is as simply a matter of anything that has inputs and outputs and feedback loops. And this goes back to about 100 years ago when some folks at MIT were coming up with some early notions of what a system is. Thank you. The flow of value there, the tempo, the rate, and the flow of information at the top. So what we're going to do here is try to define how the information will determine how the work actually flows. So it's a two-dimensional map of a system with inputs, with outputs, and a closed-loop feedback system. So this is a closed-loop system. In that sense, it's not complex. Again, I would still say complicated, but it's something that we can make understandable at the human level and that a team can themselves define. Now, before people began using this way of thinking about flow, they're simply at the mercy of all the complexity that's coming at them from their company, from the customer, from day-to-day reality. This gives an ability for this system with a closed-loop feedback to decide what the next steps should be so that every operation in the system knows what to do next. Now, simply by changing the flow of information, we can improve this system. Roberto, I don't know if you have the future state slide here. We can improve this system very easily without trying to improve welding, without trying to improve the stamping operation, which is very expensive and difficult to do, simply by working on the information which is controlling the tempo by which this system can flow value. Only by changing that, we can reduce the amount of time that work, that material, that product is in this system from 1 month to only less than 1 week. And if you've ever managed any kind of work, you know the difference between trying to manage something that has a span of 1 month is extraordinarily complex. And 1 week gives you a much better handle at actually controlling it or managing it so that it can flow value better. Now, with additional work, we can get that down to only 1 day. So what you find in the system that Toyota developed, from which we came up with the term lean production to describe that, you find a company that was working on its production system, its production and management systems for 50 years with an obsession about time. How long do things take? How long could they take? What makes things take so long? Because the longer it takes, the more chances things are going to be interrupted, and the evil forces of chaos will make things not flow to the customer as we wish. Now, again, this is a two-dimensional system map at a kind of a mid-level system in a larger enterprise. There's much more going on to understand the enterprise as an entire system. And in fact, as an entire system, it includes the customer, it includes the community, it includes everything. And it gets more and more complex. This is at a level then where managers, where leaders, and people doing work can have a level of control over their part of the system within something that is larger. Now, there's other micro levels of system going on as you double click in each process box and each person. Well, those are systems as well. But what happens if you try to improve only those? Imagine the first welding operation there, okay, the second box. What you'll find again is you can improve that, quote unquote, but you don't know, all you really do is change that. You do not know if it improved its performance within the context of the larger system, this value stream level system. So one of the things that we did right with the book Learning to See was the title, because we're giving teams of people the ability to see their operations at a mid-level system level and then make improvements in it. Another is we worked at this level that people could not get too confused and wrapped up in controlling the entire system. There are other people that can work on that, creating the environment of an enterprise within a larger complex system is also needed to be done. But by working at this level, we can take a lot of the chaos out of the work that human beings do day to day. So I think this tool has turned out to be, this method has turned out to be helpful to many people. I wasn't so sure in the beginning, actually. My co-author, lead author, Mike Rother, was convinced this was going to change the world. I wasn't so convinced. I was a reluctant participant. I had seen and known the tool as one inside Toyota, which wasn't really so broadly known, even inside Toyota, where most of the work is thinking about simple Kaizen. But this gives everyone the ability to design a way in which everyone knows what to do next. So we don't have, at the individual level, we don't have to think of grand design, especially in the auto industry where the customer is hundreds of miles away and it's weeks or even months away. In terms of time and space, the customer is very far away. So how do you translate what the customer needs into terms that can be understood at the level of a factory floor? And by factory floor, I'm going to include also the carpet gemba. I don't think you need to know many Japanese terms. One useful one, though, is gemba, which means the real place where real work takes place, where the action is. And that one is useful in terms of thinking about, we want to be empirical. We want to think of reality as we can best grasp it. And then how can we make things better simply at that level? So this is, I think this tool has enabled us to give people a different set of eyes, to see their operations in a light that takes away some of the daunting aspects of work. And to my big surprise, about 10 years after, a few years after we introduced this book, different individuals started asking about, well, that's fine that it works in a factory, but a factory is easy to control. By the way, that's not necessarily so true, but anyway, there are differences that make it easier to work in a factory. But people started working on how can we apply this to more complex work, to the carpet gemba, work in an office, people doing knowledge work, people doing service work. And to my great surprise, to be honest, this method, this tool, has turned out to be more useful, more powerful, more useful in more complex work than it is in the factory. And why is that? Actually, I would like to hear maybe what you think. I would like to hear, actually, if we have a chance to discuss, Roberto, what people think is so different of work that is not in the factory, for example, an office and knowledge work, compared to factory work. I will agree that there are some differences, but I would also argue that they're more the same than people typically think. And this tool can be even more useful in more complex work rather than factory work. For example, knowledge work, doing product development work, it can be even more helpful in those situations. Because, number one, you can't see it. So the big differences between office work and factory work, simply two things. I'm going to say, I'll make a hypothesis for you. I'll make an assertion for you. And Nigel, David, I don't know, or Bastian, and everyone in the audience, I don't know what you'll think of this. But I'm going to say in an administrative or a knowledge work process, there are really only two differences between that kind of work in a factory. Number one, it is harder to see, often impossible to see. Therefore, trying to map it out just in a two-dimensional way, not trying to capture every dimension of work that takes place in a product development lab. If we try to capture reality exactly as it is, we end up with a one-to-one map, which is ridiculous. It doesn't help. The point of a map is to simplify so we can see it. So these value stream maps simplified into two dimensions. And the same thing can be done with any kind of service work or knowledge work as well. And then we've made it visible. Now, the other difference is that it is indeed, that is, let's say office work or knowledge work, it is more variable. There's more variation. There's more change that happens. You can't see it, and it is more highly variable. But I would say that those are the only two differences, that all the other differences, we can name many, fall within one of those two categories if you draw a Venn diagram. So the magic that happens with this process is what you can see in this photograph. I love this photograph. And again, this was a surprise to us 20 years ago One surprise was how this actually worked. The process of Agile mapping was helpful even in administrative processes, service processes, healthcare, and product development, creative work. It was a surprise to me to find how useful it was. That's number one. Another surprise I didn't fully understand in the beginning was that it gets back to the title, Learning to See. What you see in this photograph is especially the two ladies there sitting on the tables and looking at the wall. They're sitting beside each other, looking together at a very messy map. Now, the map may not perfectly represent the way work actually takes place, but you know what? They're looking at it together. Instead of sitting across the table, looking at each other and pointing fingers at whose fault it is this design's fault or operations fault or finance fault that things aren't working well? They're looking together at the map and asking a set of structured questions of how we can make it better. They're asking the same questions even in an administrative or a service operation, which is what does the system output need to be? What do customers need? What value are we trying to create and provide to customers? Let's define that as clearly as we can. And then let's turn that into a rate at which the customer needs it and say this is the rate at which we would like the system to be able to operate. Then we say flow where we can. And then where we cannot flow, there's a question of how to connect disparate operations. So, Kanban is one way to do that. And there's the thing in Agile called lean Kanban, which I'm not sure what it is. Nigel knows all about it. And many people there in the office probably do as well. But it is a way to connect operations. By the way, it is not something that just tells everyone you can go do whatever you want when you want, which is what I've seen happen with lean Kanban. Instead, it tries to emphasize the connectedness within a larger, more complex system. So the social impact here, here's one reason, again, I would say that even what seem to be simple physical production operations, for example, a factory or a manufacturing company, is actually complex because it is a socio-technical system. And whenever people are involved, especially a large number of people are involved, I think there's complexity there, David. You can discuss later, again, both use of terminology, but also understanding of the concepts. But in this case, in any kind of work, there's both the work to be done, there's the technology involved, mechanical work to be done. So I'm going to spend the rest of these 2 days at Stanford Hospital. And the help that can be provided by lean process improvement in a hospital is phenomenal. It's incredible. And there, it's not just making a little value better for a customer. You're saving people's lives. In particular, I will spend some time at Stanford Children's Hospital. And they did a wonderful project in the last year where they worked on both the social side of work and the technical side of work together in an intertwined way, Nigel. So it is intertwined. It is a helix of social and technical together. And they reduced dramatically the number of canceled or postponed surgeries for babies. Now, cancellation sounds like a bad thing, but if you realize what's going on here, these are babies that need surgery. It's the worst thing that you can imagine.
John?
So they reduced the number so we can reduce the number of cancellations, we can improve any operation. So the social benefit of Agile mapping cannot be emphasized enough. And with that, I'll stop for a moment. And Roberto, you maybe add some things for the audience there, or maybe there's some questions that we can discuss further.
Okay, John, the time has gone.
Oh.
If you want to close a couple of minutes or it's okay?
Well, I think that's the main thing I wanted to say. I turned my camera on. I hope maybe that will help make the final comments. I guess I would like to simply connect the mutual challenge we have. There's a lean community, an Agile community. There's also a community of trying to understand systems and complexity. So putting these together so we can try to make the world better for people doing work and for customers and communities is incredibly, I think, useful for humans, useful for humanity, and important work for us all to do. And I would emphasize the connectedness between all these different worlds. So if we can align on the objectives and we can use the methods that allow us humans to work together better, humans are not good at working together. Well, we've only been doing that about 10,000 years. Humans have been around for a long time, but trying to cooperate in a common endeavor is perhaps only 10,000 years or so. So we're not good at it yet, but we're getting better. And I think some of these things being explored in this conference can absolutely help. What you're exploring is both interesting intellectually, but also practically useful to make things better for the world.